or they do some sign. So I can do lip speaking without sign or lip speaking and add the sign. And then that allows me to go and work for any area I want to, any person. So if there's a deaf person working, they have access to work budget. They pay to have communication support if they prefer to lip read. And then so I work in health care. I support a health visitor. I support a lady that works for Deaf Blind UK. Excuse me. I'm in court. I'm lip speaking in court. A defendant is deaf, so I'm there to support a defendant who's deaf. So I work in all sorts of domains, and that's where it takes me. So any deaf person who needs communication support by way of lip reading would ask a lip speaker to give that support.
That's fantastic. And you've said that, you've covered courts and what have you, but you must get people out of a real jam. They get into and I think communication is the greatest skill that we as police officers have, both written and oral communication. And to be able to use that in your business in such a professional way is absolutely fantastic. So if you had a target market, a wish list of people that would like to listen to this, what areas of industry in the community would you like to reach out to? Any,
because I can support any deaf person in any domain. So, obviously if it's scientific, as long as I can say the word, then I can support them. Obviously science, you get some really random acronyms and difficult words. But if I can say the word, I can support them in whatever domain, and a lot of deaf people who lip read just get on with it because they don't realise what support is out there for them. So what I would say is to anybody who's listening who has a deaf employee, a deaf family member who's struggling at work. I did an interview the other day and a lady it was a PIP assessment, and she said, I really struggle at work in meetings because people don't talk one at a time. So she'd never had communication support.
What's a PIP assessment?
So personal independence payment.
Right,
so
okay.
I do communication support for people who are being assessed for PIPs. That's another area that we do. And while she was being asked about, her deafness, how it affects her daily living, she was explaining about being at work in meetings every day. And although her colleagues know she's deaf, they forget a lot and they just carry on talking, and she's excluded from so much because of that. Whereas if myself or another lip speaker, as this lady didn't sign, she lip reads, was in there, she could say who's talking, what they're saying. That's our job. We relay all of the information that is in a room so that person has full access to it.
And you're absolutely right about the exclusionary element, because if there was any other form of diversity and they were being excluded in the same way, there would be outcry.
Absolutely.
But because somebody's deaf, it's almost, they're deaf and they're almost excluded immediately without anything else.
And, people do it without realising it.
Yeah.
Someone's deaf and they ask a question and they say, sorry, I didn't hear you, I'm deaf. They go, oh, don't worry about it. That is the worst thing, awful thing that you can say to any deaf person. If you felt it was enough to say it, then you should be telling them what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are so good at adapting to lip reading. They might not get it all. Even an expert lip reader will only get about 70% of what is said.
Right.
And it's very important, if you're communicating with a deaf person, let them know what you want to talk to about first. So don't just tap them on the shoulder and say blah, blah, blah. Just tap them and say, I want to talk to you about, your paperwork, because then they'll start to look for words related to paperwork on your mouth, because we all know you can get mixed up. People do the whole colourful, don't they? I love you or colourful looks exactly the same when you switch the voice off.
Right.
So it's things like that. But they'll be able to piece it together like a jigsaw.
We were watching the One Show, and the Rose was on there.
Rose Ayling.
Fantastic. What a person. And it took her a while to catch up with what the conversation was about. Mm-hmm. But it's marvellous that she's able to work within the theatrical world successfully.
Yes.
Because 20 years ago, she wouldn't have.
No.
We spoke earlier on about the differences between sign and lip speaking and how they abbreviate the conversation. Could you explain that for me?
Yeah, so, BSL is a completely language in its own right. So in English, we say, hello, my name's Kirsty. In BSL, they'll say, name me. So,
and you're signing. What's your explaining to me?
I'm signing.
No, it's fine, but obviously.
Yeah. So someone who is full BSL, their first language is BSL.
Okay.
It's not English.
Okay.
Someone who lip reads, their first language is usually English, or it would be English.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So you have a BSL interpreter, or you have a lip speaker. So it depends what the deaf person's first language is.
Okay.
Some can switch between the two. If they've been brought up oral but then have gone on to use BSL every day, then they can switch between the two. But they normally have a preference of,
It's fascinating.
Sign language. And deafness is very personal. So what one deaf person wants in communication, another one won't want the same. It's a very personal. You'll have cochlears, you'll have hearing aids. Some will have nothing, have no sound. I mean, cochlear implants and hearing aids don't fix hearing.
No.
They give you some hearing back. And that's where the misconception is as well, is that, she's got hearing aids, so she should be able to hear. But it won't be at different ranges, different tones. And hearing aids give them every bit of noise.
Yeah.
We can shut out background noise. A hearing aid can't do that.
They've got to live with it.
They have everything that's going on.
All or nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And how do you think, bear in mind this is relatively new, how long has have there been lip speakers?
A long time, to over 20 years.
Right,
but it's just never really been advertised as much. I mean, it's coming more and more. I mean, I'm a self-employed lip speaker and I get bookings pretty much every day.
Yeah.
So we are spreading the word out there, and the deaf community are spreading the word, especially the lip reading ones, who are deaf and want that support. But yeah, I mean, it's...
Well, I hope that we can raise the profile of what you do.
Yeah.
Certainly from your business perspective as
Thank
well.
you.
Try and give you some more support from there. Before we stop, is there anything? This is a place. Is there anything you'd like to add, alter, or clarify, or you'd like to say before we conclude this interview? I'm not going to say the time or the date, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just wanted to add that I am a police-approved interpreter and translator. There's only actually, I believe, 2 lip speakers in the whole of the UK that have got that accreditation. That is now a requirement for any interpreters.
That's fantastic.
In the police domain to have that accreditation.
And how often have you been used by the British Police Service?
I haven't as yet, although I have been contacted, but they needed an BSL interpreter. But again, I put them on to someone that could help with that.
That's interesting, because I wonder what they're actually doing in order to deal with victims and the like who are deaf. Bear in mind, if there's only 2 of you, the law of averages says that you should be getting called in to deal with these individuals.
Yeah, it's there's 2 lip speakers. There might be more BSL interpreters, but 2 lip speakers accredited in the UK at the moment. And along with that comes government clearance as well. So, I've been vetted for all of that. And I would love to collaborate more with Essex Police to try and raise their deaf awareness and try and improve their service to the deaf community, because I think that's important. And I've got the accreditation to do that.
Or maybe we need to speak to Vernal Scott, who runs the inclusion department at Essex Police. I do follow him on Twitter, and I will make sure that I get him tagged in this and that he's made aware of the things that you do.
Yeah. I mean, it's anything to do with the deaf community, we'll be able to help.